longest countdown ever. It always takes a minute for everybody to get on anyway, if there is anybody that would want to join. So hopefully they don't hear it, but maybe they do. Boom. We're live. We should have done it like Joe Rogan does. Anybody listen to Joe Rogan at all?
Sure.
Where like they just pick it up middle conversation and you don't really know what him and the guests were just talking about. Anywho, Windshield Time live back with probably our biggest panel we've ever had on, our biggest amount of guests at one time. We keep losing Megan though.
She'll be back. She's persistent.
She's coming. While we're doing that, what I'd like to do is give everybody a chance to go kind of around the horn. We'll start with Dustin Rhodes and just kind of tell everybody that's going to join us at some point on this to a little bit about yourself, if you don't mind. And like I said, we'll start with Dustin.
Yeah, cool. Dustin Rhodes, 25-year vet in the remodeling industry now. Currently SVP of sales for Great Day, helping overlook the enterprise, and also author of the book Dumb Tax. So that's a quick 159 since there's a lot of people on here.
Perfect. Tim.
Yeah, Tim Brown, RGS Exteriors out of Salt Lake City. Really siding, windows, gutters, decks, pretty much everything on the outside. And I'm kind of unique. I'm actually a fourth generation of my kids. I've got 4 kids, and they're the 5th generation in our family business. So we've been doing exteriors for a few years.
Wow. I didn't realize that. Maybe I did. I apologize. Derek.
Yeah, I'm Derek, co-owner over at Top Home Improvements. Been in the industry for probably about 10 years. Started with another company, branched off, started our own about going on 6 years ago, and just learning every day and trying to get better in this crazy industry we're in.
It's good approach, I think. I don't fault you there. Tony.
Yeah, Tony Hody. I'm in Cleveland, Ohio. Have Window Expo and Bath Expo, and been helping the industry with lead generation for a little over 30 years.
And last but definitely most certainly not least, Megan.
Hi, Megan Beatty. I work with Tony Hody Training and Consulting. I have been in the industry going on 20 years, really learning how to build lead generation programs from the ground up. I know a lot about many things in our business, pretty well-rounded, and my husband and I own a residential fence company in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So not only am I advising companies all over the country, but practitioner of all of these things as we speak.
Awesome. But yeah, I didn't know about the fence company until I heard you on stage. I didn't realize that. Maybe I did.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep.
That's awesome. So one of the things, we did this last year, a few others, but this year it just seemed like there was some more aha moments than I was expecting maybe. And I just wanted to get kind of everybody's take. Plus, I think there was some I don't know, friction. Maybe that's not the right word, but just some points of view that were, I don't know, interesting. So obviously we're in some wild times, and I just wanted to get a group of industry pros like we have, which is awesome, on to get their take. Obviously, Megan, Tony, Derek, you guys were all in this particular one on stage. So, the part where it says, hey, what was your favorite part? You can't answer for yourself. That's not fair. But outside of that, there's really no rules. So I kind of wanted to just lead off. Was there anything that, you walked away the next day or got home the next day and it was like, wow, that was, whether it was an individual speaker or just an individual topic that came up. And in some cases, it may not even been on stage. Obviously, part of Top 500 are all the conversations out and about. So anything that stood out to anybody? Anybody want to go first?
Well, I'll throw something out just really, really quick. Nothing specific, but one thing that I thought was really interesting is last year on stage, Renovo was there, right? Speaking about how wonderful things were. And so here we are 12 months later. And that's not a knock on him, but I think the point is how rapidly our industry changes. I mean, you go from a company that's thriving and on stage 12 months ago to not even in existence. In fact, there were people that were supposed to be there on stage from there. So, right. So, and the reason why I bring that up is just how quickly and rapidly things change. And so it's so important for us to be at these events so that we can learn and see what the latest and greatest, because 6 months ago might be too late.
I thought it was interesting that Patrick, he didn't waste any words, got right into it, didn't he, when he brought up Renovo as in the middle of the introduction, which was, I mean, great. Why not address the elephant in the room? Anything else from anybody that
I would say for me, you go to a lot of conferences, and being salespeople, being marketing, it's hard to sit still and sit in a room and sit in a chair and listen to people. But I will say, out of all the conferences that I've been to, that was one of the best. They had some of the best people up there that kept your attention, wanted you to keep learning more, and be like, wow, that makes sense. That's common sense. That why aren't we all doing those things? And obviously Chris and Marcus and I forget the guy's name that was sitting right next to Chris on that panel, but they had complete opposite views of lead generations. But what caught my attention was Marcus, when he was talking about, putting those things online, and then the other guy next to Chris saying, 5 years ago, even a year ago, we never thought people would be buying cars off the internet. And now look, people are buying Teslas every single day off the internet. So just the way that the consumer's brain is changing, and changing rapidly, and only going to get faster with AI, because we're a strictly outbound company. So we canvas and do events. That's what we do. And now we're getting into more of the AI stuff. So to hear that and some tricks and we're switching over to, we don't just guess anymore. We go off data. If we don't have data on it, then how do you know? It's just your opinion at that point. So to see Marcus show data on all of that stuff was incredible too, because it's I think it blows everyone's mind with the AI, because it doesn't seem like it would work in our industry.
For sure. Tony, you've done a little bit of some of the things that Marcus talked about. I don't, whether he was the originator, that's here nor there. I don't think there's anything necessarily groundbreaking that he talks about. It's just groundbreaking to our industry historically in terms of we don't do those things. So, but you've done some of that stuff in the past, haven't you?
Yeah. I've done some online pricing tools, things of that nature. And for me, I think it is fascinating, and I love paying attention to it. But I think the real question, as far as I'm concerned, is if you can get more eyeballs to your website, right? More visitors, more traffic, and that justifies the loss of people who leave or bounce from your website because the pricing scared them away. Can you make it a net positive, right? That's really what it's about. I mean, how much information is too much, right? I think the way that when it comes to pricing specifically, but we have to figure that out, right? I think then the only way you figure that out is by doing some testing. And, one of my favorite quotes on marketing is, if all your marketing's working, you're doing it wrong, right? You have to be failing a little bit, right? You have to be testing and stretching the boundaries if you really want to, face the future with potential.
Yeah.
Megan, did you want to add to that? I saw you chime in a little bit.
Yeah. So I have a unique experience with this, because I did this years ago, actually. We had an app on our website called My Salesman app, where people could draw their own fence and they could get, a roundabout price. And I played with the ranges. I made them small ranges, large ranges, high range, low range, to see what would happen, right? And I was very conscious. I only did it for a few months, but I was very conscious to make sure I didn't change a bunch of other things at that same time, so I could monitor, the results and see. We didn't end up with a ton more leads at the end of the day. We didn't. And I'm not saying that couldn't be the case. I have clients that have Roofle and they get some sales out of it every month. I look at the reports every month and I can tell you that's a reality. However, do we have the data to say at the end of the day, because we have this and it attracted people to the site? Did I end up at the end of the month with more in-home presentations? Did I end up at the end of the month with more or less than I would have if that was not on there? And I don't think we have that good data yet. But like Tony said, I mean, the only way to know is to do. I actually ended up with a lot less leads overall in terms of people I could get a hold of. Yes, if they went on and drew their own fence, I would get their lead information, but getting those people to answer the phone was very difficult after that because, in my opinion, they had what they wanted, right? As soon as they get the price, right? It's you know, and I'm not saying that can't change or won't change. You know, I'm not so bullheaded to think that Marcus doesn't know what he's talking about, because he definitely does. That's an incredibly smart man when it comes to internet marketing. I just don't know if we are at the point that all of us have to adopt it yet. We probably will get there down the road at some point. I just don't think we're there quite yet. But I loved all the stuff he talked about as well when he was talking about just answering the questions people are asking, even if it's about your competitor. I loved that. I thought that was really, we just, you know, Tony has done this to me for years where he says something and I go, oh, that was really simple. Like, why didn't I think of that? Right. And I feel almost dumb because I didn't think of it first. Right. But it's just, sometimes it takes that little bit of different perspective, Joe, to really get, you know, an idea that's new. We got a lot, just to give my biggest takeaway, we got a lot out of, again, you mentioned it could be something that wasn't from the stage. Dustin and BG did a book signing up in one of the penthouses. And I know Derek attended that too. And we got a ton out of that, right? Like hearing Brian talk about business disciplines over SOPs was a really huge takeaway. And just some of the conversations before and after have been super helpful to us. We've already implemented a couple of the things. Like my husband's an implementer. He comes back and he gets to work immediately on things. So that's been interesting. It's been really, really cool to see. But I got a ton out of it too in all different areas: install, marketing, everything. So
I know I'm supposed to be the one lobbing out questions. I do want to talk about, it was interesting because I think it also depends on where in the funnel you're pulling a consumer in, right? Like inbound versus outbound. And more where it popped into my head was, and I don't know if anybody remembers the panel that had ultimately Chris Cunahan was a part of it. And it was good to hear him speak up. Hey, I actually disagree with everybody on here in terms of being able to buy at the, from your phone. And, he had data around the testing they had done. And again, we had a big part of the conference talked about bringing outbound back to the forefront, if you will, meaning going out and generating a lead. Megan, Tony, you guys talked about it, going back to some of the original things that got this industry where it is. Obviously, Derek, you guys already do that, as you mentioned. So you have that coming back into the industry, and then you had a conversation around, hey, I don't think we're going to sell in the home anymore, or sell the way we do in the home. And I think the industry needs more training. I think we have a huge opportunity to improve our sales, professionals, and make it more professional. But I don't think eliminating that is the answer when you look at then how we generate a lead and where we take people in a matter of 90 minutes when they were thinking about, they're at a Costco thinking about buying a pallet of spaghetti sauce, and then a day / 90 minutes later, whenever we get there, we're having them sign on the dotted line for a $20,000 bathroom.
Yeah.
So,
to your point, Joe, if I can interject there, I've done rehash for years, asset recovery, revisiting appointments, and sometimes as a professional who's been doing it for a long time, I notice in the house that perhaps a rookie salesperson might not have noticed, right? And, I'm just going to give a rudimentary example, like the shutters on the home were faded when I was walking up to the house. And, I didn't have to drop price. I didn't have to do anything. I just told them that we were going to include shutters with the project because we're going to make the house look beautiful when it's done. And that should be included. And I'm sorry that wasn't seen by the sales rep when they were here. So I give that example because, I don't know how you see stuff like that when you're not at the home, right? You're never going to have that opportunity to do things like that. just, presenting virtually.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to make one comment that some may not make. I'm not a huge fan of people talking about how to go about selling in the home when they've never carried a bag in the home. Right? I don't go changing your industry kind of thing. So, I mean, obviously sales is my background more than anything in this industry, and fortunate and grateful to have carried a bag in the home for a long period of time. Some days I wish I could go back to carrying a bag in the home. Right? But when you have somebody who's like, oh, this is where we're going, or this is where the industry wants to go. And I'm always reminded by, Henry Ford said, hey, if I listened to everybody, customer wise, we'd still be driving horses or, horse and carriage. So that was it was good. Like I said, when Chris spoke up on that panel, it was like, yeah, I disagree. We're going to need to continue to go in the home and do what we do.
Well, I just love the healthy debate. I love iron sharpens iron, and like you mentioned that Patrick, came out early about Renovo, and they didn't hide behind that. And you had Vince Nardo up on stage with other people, that are private equity affiliated, right? And so there was no hiding anything, and that's what I thought was beautiful about the event. It was just totally forthcoming in all of our the good and bad and the ugly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think a big thing too, just, kind of piggybacking on what you guys are saying, very interesting facts. I stayed quiet for a minute because like you guys had the ADHD and I was in and out of the conference room a lot. Right. So, spent a lot of time catching up. But I did sit in there, like you guys were talking about at the beginning, and hit the AI stuff specifically. Right. Cause I'm super interested in where things are leaning towards that. And I loved hearing too, I didn't love it, but the fact that Google words can't be bought, right? That your AI is not going to recognize the same thing as a Google word. So it's going to make marketing a little bit different of a player. And that I think it was Epi or Epi, I'm not sure, the West Shore guy. I'm not sure if I'm butchering his name, but he had talked about, he had I called it like price conditioning, right? They had that picture of the door, picture of the bathroom, and they price conditioned. I was thinking to myself, I'm like, man, if it gets to that point, think about how are we going to have to train the reps different to go into if it's conditioned at one thing to add the value, to basically subtract the value. What are the things that, if you're looking at it from a perspective of sales training, leadership, coaching, development, phone sales, all the things we're doing, how are we getting ahead of those programs, or how are we getting ahead of the way that marketing trends might or might not be leaning? So we can get it, because some people we call are low cost leaders. Some people are selling for more value, right? Very finance driven. I really think that I thought how the AI leaning in is going to be a proponent. Because you think about it, a lot of people have rested their laurels on buying keywords and owning market spaces and non-shared avenues. So looking at your your basically two market strategy, I thought was one of the most interesting things that that I dealt with. It was pretty. I thought those were pretty eye opening when you're thinking about just forward thinking in the industry. Because regardless of where we want to go, things are changing, and I feel like if we don't adapt, you're going to fall behind. And that's where I'm always looking at, like, how do we stay one or two steps ahead of where the rest of the industry is going? Because there's lots of tech and a lot of things that were there, a lot of vendors that I already know and want to get to know. And I thought it was just super interesting to see just as much as I thought was changing really hasn't changed yet. And then there's a lot of ideas on the table I think people are working on that if they do come to fruition will be cool. But I think right now is like how I look at it, day one back in is like brass roots. We got to perfect what we're currently doing still before we can ever integrate something else. Right. And I thought that was pretty interesting. So just wanted to add that.
You just reminded me of or something I thought about with the gentleman from West Shore, and I know exactly what screen you're talking about. But to the concept of putting price out there,
Yep.
What pricing do you give? Because you just brought it up. You taught me that where do you condition? You condition off of retail.
Yep.
Right.
So if I give ultimately the first conditioning is now going to be potentially on the computer. right? In terms of like, you build a base door, it looked like in that example. And now I get out to the home, and of course, that's not what they end up wanting. They need more, blah, blah, blah. Next thing you know, how much of a challenge is that going to be overcome? Because that anchor was set on, the smartphone when they set the appointment.
Well, we run into companies trying to do that on the phone already, Joe, right? Like they're trying to do this on the phone mainly because salespeople bitch long enough and they're like, oh, okay, well, let's just start asking these questions on the phone. And it's like, well, if you're going to take the in-home selling steps and make the call center do it, you're going to have to pay them part of the commission eventually too, because you're not going to need, these guys doing all. So, there's a couple things to think of there. And it kind of cracks me up. It reminds me when Derek and I worked together years ago, Rick Grosso used to come to our company 2 or 3 times a year. And one of the things he would always start out with, because there's always this, sales is going to change and one call close is going to be dead. People have been saying that for 10 years. Okay. It's not a new phenomenon. Okay. And so Rick would come and he'd start with, we got a lot of different objections back in the 80s, guys. We got, I need to talk to my wife. I need to get other quotes. We got, I just need to sleep on it. He's like, probably much different than what you're getting today. And we'd all go, well, no, that's exactly. And, I think that we have to kind of look at the fact that some of the methodologies and how we handle this stuff might change a bit. There's some newer practices that some of the new sales trainers are doing that are effective, but they still are running off of the old school principles of why people buy. Right. And that's through the price conditioning step and getting them ready for the price at retail. And then, people feeling like, it's important that they're getting the best value and asking them if we like all of those principles are still the same reason that people end up buying because of the perception of the value. So it's just really interesting to me. I loved how Chris Cunahan too, when he was up on stage alone, how he said, we don't have these guys anymore. And he showed up the Sparta Warrior and he said, we don't have these guys anymore. We've got, and that kind of reminded me of the Renovo thing too. Like we've got a bunch of people that have, to Joe's point, never carried a bag in the house telling us what we should change from the pencil pushing side of things. Right. And I'll tell you, being a consultant, I've had to clean up a lot of those messes of what was a very successful call center, hundreds of millions of dollars. And I come in and they put a bunch of people in charge that don't know what the hell they're doing in our industry and think that because they came from an industry with a $200 ticket, that it's the same as an industry with a $10,000 or $20,000 ticket when the resistance is completely different from the homeowner's end and they don't know how to handle it. And so it ends up, we have to make a lot of changes, but I really like some of the bigger guys in our industry that were going in and saying, guys, we got to, and Tony and I have been saying, we got to master this foundational stuff before we start piling tech upon tech upon tech upon tech on stuff. It just makes it more crowded and expensive. And so we've got to make sure we're using tech in the right way, right? And otherwise it can hurt us. It can hurt us in a big way.
But I think,
go ahead.
I was going to say the one thing I think Megan's dead on, and I think kind of earlier what you were talking about with, the bag in the home sort of example is it was always a 2-call sell system forever. And only the high pressure guys were doing 1-call close and only the guy. So, and now we're learning that, look, homeowners are busier. And so the 1-call close can happen and not be high pressure. Right. And so I think maybe that's an example of we got to get back to the foundation of the basic stuff, but then adapt with the new age. And so my argument would be like, we can still do 1-call close, not be high pressure, not be I'm going to have 10,000 drops, and yet still get back to the roots. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I think that was actually a takeaway from this conference is adapt, but still stick to the foundation.
Yeah, kind of like what Dustin was saying, we're really good at the outbound, but being ahead of the curve of if it does come, like Megan said, the objections have stayed the same. The core things have stayed the same for so long. But what I think is happening also is we go to something like that where a lot of people were tech driven and then pretty soon it buries your brain. So then you come back and you think you got to do all this tech stuff and you forget about the other stuff that matters. I told our director of marketing, I said, hey, when you're focused on, say, this over here, because we're doing this well, don't forget about this over here because then you're going to leave this and have to go back and fix this. So being able to stay ahead of the curve, but also stay to what you're good at and what works and don't get away from that. Because eventually, AI might be a thing, pretty soon, you look back when I was in high school, I didn't have social media. I had Facebook, right? And now there's all this extra stuff, and you just start learning. But the kids that have it now, right when they're, get their first phone, they can use it way better than I can. So eventually maybe that AI is down the road, where kids, that's all they know, which will also put a different type of look at this industry, because this is a boots on the ground, knock in the doors type of industry that it'll take away from the industry as well, I believe, down the road.
Tony,
I think
say something. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to pitch in one more thing based on that is, you kind of talked about outbound marketing, right? And when the lead's not picking up, you got to go find it. And one of the most important things I tell you is, like, from a perspective of, working with a lot of people and being an old pace setter guy, where the first thing I ever learned was one call close, right? And just how the industry changes. And I giggled. I said, 'cause I remember when I started with Jubilee, I actually ran into a guy that I knew from way back in the day. Is like when people actually wanted you in the house compared to when they had you to fight your way in the house in 15 increments, right? It kind of changes your approach. So when you start realizing that, the way you speak, the way you deliver to your customers, and the way that they perceive you is 9/10 the battle, right? If it sounds conversational, but you're still getting commitment, you're still associating a lot of different things, and knowing 8 of every receptors of the brain are based on pain, right? 3 are based off gain. And we start looking at the difference of approach. And so what I think of is, like, with tech and AI and the things that we talk about, all the data, all the analytics, dude, we're at like an information disadvantage now compared to we're ever an information advantage. But the problem is there's so much false information and fake information out there that people don't really know what to trust. That's why I think the human interaction of still being face to face is, I don't think there's any replacement of that value now until this thing gets probably, realistically, it could be 3-5 years down the road before maybe we got to realize that. Everyone's saying it's coming today, but guess what? That's the marketing companies trying to sell you that, right? Same thing as fear based. So you got to realize is, like, what is your grassroots you're right down into, dude? And the stuff you do have you really even figured out how to use it, or did you just get a taste and now you're moving on to the next thing? Because one of the things that I did a lot of run with my book and some of the coursework I built and with the company too is, there's different kinds of AI, right? You get into open AI, and a lot of the people that got the role play robots thing that are coming into there where they're scanning it. With some of those, they're not in closed cell. You can actually train it when you're running it. If you do it wrong more than you do it right, you actually train the AI on how to do it wrong, right? So therefore, you got to constantly be retooling it. So there's more things out there if you don't understand it that could be damaging to your business if you just think you set it up once and don't have to keep retouching it, tooling it. It's a learning system. It's a model. It's a behavior. It's things of nature that if you don't really know how to utilize it, you don't know how to benefit and how to weaponize it, then again, you probably shouldn't even touch it yet, right? So again, because it can really destroy your business, your reps, and your reputation if you don't know how to set it the right way.
Well, like BG, I heard him say this up in you guys' books, and we're in such a simple industry, but yet we overcomplicate it with everything. And now throwing AI in it, it's completely overcomplicated. You get the lead, sell the lead, install the lead, train new reps, train new marketers, go get a lead, sell the lead, install it. It can be so simple, but yeah, you're right. We do overcomplicate it and let it control us.
Yeah. And I think if you think about this, and this just happened from talking to a lot of the, like, networking, right? I sat in at a couple of the different events and just speaking to other business owners, man, we suffer in our industry. We suffer in this entire industry from what I call the mushy middle, right? We have good executives. We got sometimes good sales representatives, but the middle management, the sales leadership, the middle leadership is really weak. Yes. Is because there's not a whole lot of training and programs designed to get them up where they need to go. So become this mushy middle and expect things to start funneling its way down. So what you figure is people are building all this tech, trying to remove their mushy middle to make their business, to automate the middle of their business, but it's not working.
No.
Right? Because again, that face to face, the difference we put in front of our representatives, the way we hire people. Yes, plug dumb tax. Just kidding. But the purpose is, again, is like, how do you hire people? Do you even know what you're looking for? Who's the avatar we're trying to bring in? That's a perfect, because aging workforce, right? People that are going into different industries, right? And this younger generation is coming into it, which doesn't want to work from sun up till sundown, right? How are we making the industry enticing to people that it has not been so far, right? So I think if you're not trying to get ahead of that game before you're trying to get ahead of the AI game, I think you're making a major mistake in your business, and you're going to find yourself going backwards, right? Because speed of leader, right? Speed of leader. If I got a 6 as a middle manager, I'm probably only collecting in 4s and 5s as reps, which means you're never going to be done with your turnover, right? Then Megan and Tony are making a ton of money off you coming in there and fixing your business. But the purpose is, again, how do you fix it? Do you understand what you're looking for and understand your avatar on how to build your business the right way?
Yeah, that middle management is that's so true, Dustin. I did a whole presentation for a big mastermind group right before Top 500 in Vegas about the same thing. And the thing is the symptoms don't show up in the middle. The symptoms show up at the entry level with the customer.
Yep.
But it's always a middle management problem, right? Because somebody didn't hold them accountable, and they didn't hold them accountable because they had other shit to do, and they didn't do this because of that, and they couldn't ride along because they have Rilla now and they don't need to. And there's, and Tony and I talk about all the time too, the Rilla's not supposed to replace the ride along. Yes, it allows us to be on many more, right? Because we can see, if I go out and ride in the house with this rep and I see what he's doing, I can look at his last 10 Rillas and see he's got the same exact patterns in each one, and I know exactly what he's missing. Well, he's not getting the heat lamp out of the bag. Well, geez, there's, genius, right? But the reality is there's so much more learned at the ride along, right? Other than just what happened in the house on the Rilla, right? Like, I can remember Derek and I going on a lead together, and we got in the car and I said, you know why we didn't get it? He's like, I don't know what else I could have done. And then we talked through it, and then he beat his head against the steering wheel for a few minutes, and he learned that lesson, right? That we missed a 30-pounder. And then he came back, and I bet Derek didn't miss that again, right? If you're not live in the house with them, you miss those opportunities, right?
And I think off of that too, our leadership meeting today was about culture, and kind of at the Top 500, they were talking about culture too. Everyone thinks they have a good culture, but at the end of the day, ask your people and they'll be the ones that tell you if there's a good culture. So if we're always, as managers, just listening to the recordings and that's how we're coaching, you're not building a culture. You're building a barrier between you and the rep. Because a sales rep, whether they're going to say it or not, wants to know that their manager is out there on the battlefield with them. Maybe not all the time because it's impossible, but at least a couple times a month where with each rep, then that way they're out there and it's building that culture. And then if you don't have a lead, hey, let's go grab some food and chat about that and chat about what's going on. And then you care about their personal life. So yeah, it's like Ciro and Rilla, and we told our man, we just started with Ciro, and we made that very clear in the beginning that this does not replace ride-alongs one bit, because the second you take that out of there, you lose respect from your reps. You're not hands-on, and that culture that we all talk about will start dying off.
I think then it becomes a punishment to use it too, rather than basically a tool. And if you look at it like a coaching tool and not a punishment, it's a whole different mindset flip. I'd say anytime you're going to lash out anything to do with Cirilla, it's all the beholder of the implementer, right? Implementation's key. You can have the best process in the world. If you don't implement it correctly, it's worthless. So the same thing as any of those tools and tech you do too, is like, how are you utilizing it, right? Do you actually have a written program? Is there an SOP for how to use it properly in your business? Is there scorecards? What are the things then? How do you utilize it effectively to set up your meetings? What are we using it for, right? What is the scorecard designed for? Does even your managers know? Right? Think about it. The guys who can't hire anyone probably don't even know how to use it the right way. They're using it probably how they would have done it as a rep, which might not even be the right way. Because as we all know, your best reps don't make your best managers. They generally make their worst managers because they create chaos and never want to be outdone. So they always want to basically blame people for what they feel like they should have done different. That might even be off process. So I think there's things the implementation thing is what sticks in, dude. I deal with, so just like you guys, fixing businesses, turn around things, and making sure we're making the industry better. But again, you can fall victim to the approach you handle things with reps in a hurry, right? Because they're all about their mindset.
Tony, I was going to ask, can you just go ahead and email anything you were going to respond to here today, and just we'll send out a newsletter. I know you've been wanting to chime in on this, and I have a feeling you're going to add some. We're cutting you off. I apologize.
No, it's quite all right. There's a lot of brilliant minds, and I'm happy to be a part of it. The whole theme of Qualified Remodeler Top 500 really boils down to a lesson I learned long ago from someone I follow by the name of Rory Sutherland, a brilliant man. And he talks about bumblebees, okay, and how they have outlived the human population by 20 centuries, right? Or longer. And what they do, as the reason they've been able to sustain for such a long period of time, is because they actually spend 80% of their population spends the time looking for going to areas of pollen and areas of nectar that exist, and they know they exist, and they're easy to find. And then they communicate through this waggle dance, and 20% of their population goes and searches for new pollen and new honey and new nectar, right? And so I really feel that's a microcosm for, home remodeling companies who go to the top 500 and they say, well, should I go home and start a 40-man canvassing program, or should I go all in on selling online, right? And the answer, of course, is neither, right? It's spend 80% of your time, doing what you know how to do, grinding and getting better at what you're already doing, tightening up on those things. And of course, dedicate some times. Keep your ear to the tracks. Don't get away from, new potential, new possibilities. Don't stop networking. Don't stop going to conferences, and keeping, yourself aware of what's coming, right? Some of us get so caught up in what's coming, and it just never shows up, right? I went to visit Brian Gottlieb at Harvard when he was enrolled there, and I asked him if I could shadow him for a couple of days. He goes, I don't know the answer to that. I'm going to have to ask. And he got back to me and said, yeah, they're willing to let you come in and shadow for a couple of days. Well, we went through a case study on autonomous cars. And while I was there, and that was 15 years ago or something, at least 10 years ago, they said, they're coming a lot sooner than they have come, right? They're still not prevalent. They're still not in every market, although, the anticipation was that they would be. And so you can't get overly bought in on some of the tech stuff. You really have to stay focused on what's working in your business today. And I think that's a really important message.
100%. Megan, you mentioned something about Dan already implementing something. What was it, if I may ask?
Yeah. Our headaches have not been in leads and sales. Our headaches have been on the install end, and really just getting the processes together, because we know that if we hire subs, we can't control the quality level, right? And that's been a bottleneck and a problem for us in the past couple of months. And so we were talking to DJ, who's a friend of mine from Absolute Aluminum. And he said, man, Dan, my headaches are gone ever since I went up to Tommy Mello's organization, saw his training facility. And then I just made my own training facility to train my own crews, right? Which you would think I would know, because we did that at the company I came from. We had a test wall. It was part of our selling process that we'd make installers come in and prove that they could install in front of us, right? So we got home, and my husband spent all day on Friday, him and our warehouse manager, creating test walls to install 3 or 4 different kinds of fences inside of our office in our warehouse. So he's already got all the poles up today. They're going to have to come in and show us they can install vinyl chain link aluminum fencing in front of us before they ever get to one of our customers firsthand. So that was something that DJ said, boy, I'm bored because my install team's just going so well. I have no headaches in this area. That's where I said, holy shit, why didn't we do this before? So we came home and he got busy on that immediately. So I'm excited. We interviewed a couple crews in the last couple of weeks. We're going to bring them in sometime this week and have them try to test it out and see how they do. So, yeah.
So anybody can answer this next question, or maybe there isn't an answer. Is there anything within the industry that you think is still being ignored? When in terms of with going to a conference and you're like, why aren't we talking about an elephant in the room, or why aren't we, bringing up this, trend that maybe you see already, or I don't know if that question makes complete sense now that I ask it out loud, but or I guess you could also look at it as, was there anything that you were hoping to get out of it or hear more about that you didn't?
Well, I'll tell you, I'll answer the question. I think Megan just answered it for you. We go to these events, and there's really only one organization, in my opinion, that covers the production side of it. And it's all about marketing and sales, right? And so you bring your guys to the marketing and sales, which is critical. But nobody talks about that other leg of the stool. Certified Contractors Network is probably the only group that does that. And so I think that is something we're missing. And I was actually going to bring that up earlier is I bring a lot of my team to a lot of the events. Well, I don't to Top 500. It's an amazing event, not to diminish it, but I'm not going to bring my production manager to Top 500, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think we need that. I think we need more events for production managers and for production, because that's a third of the stool.
Yeah, we said when we started, we knew sales and marketing pretty well, but the third leg is install. And I've never put in a window, I've never put on a roof, I've never done any of that. So we had to figure it out on the way. Well, because you can go get a lead and you can sell a lead, but if you don't know how to put it in, who really cares? Because your business is going to be buried in 2 seconds. So it took us a while. So I agree with that too, that there's not a lot of stuff on production, and a lot of people are left, if you've never done it before, to figure it out, which makes us stronger, of course, to figure that side out and know it and be able to answer the questions and our expectations when those products are going in on what we want, because obviously everyone tries to do it different. But yeah, I mean, it's very short of learning about the production side.
Yeah, if you don't, you're operating from weakness. It's like there's a gentleman way back in the day named Ed Levine, this Jewish guy from Champion, right? And he beat me, Earl Ron, Matt Colligan, a lot of the freaking Toby Tokes, a lot of the guys out there that end up selling their business, doing very well. We all come from that school of hard knocks, I call it, where he would abuse you with simple terms that you could not fight and argue, but make you want to be better, right? So one of the things back in the day they made us do is go back and get our VSI certification for Vinyl Siding Institute, right? Now, I live in San Diego, California, so there's not a lot of vinyl siding around here, but it's still that aspect, installation masters, right? How to install a window and door correctly, right? There's just these different vehicles you start learning how to do. And I remember when GAF came out, right? I became a GAF master certified installer, ventilation specialist, home inspector. I took all these things because I never wanted anyone to throw the wool over my eyes, because I wanted to become the expert and not let anyone be able to say something I didn't know or bill me for something I didn't know either. So it allowed me to learn how to work with contractors, right? And then going out, visiting job sites, having them come in and sit down and go over the labor bills, right? Flagging things, all the things that you think isn't sexy as far as from the sales proponent side is. But when you understand the other side of the business as well, I think you just elevate your entire career, and you know how to pivot and navigate. Surprise or left for birthday parties, which you'll realize at that point, if you don't know anything about install, then it steals all the front ends times 2, because that's where all your chaos is created, right? Because people don't know.
You said that the sexy part, because it's not the sexy part, but the idea, it's the part that buttons the whole thing up. And when we went from sales and marketing is just butterflies and rainbows and motivation and this, that, and you try to deal with an installer and try to motivate them, it's a totally different game. And after a while, when you're doing all three, it wears on you, and you're like, okay, when we hired our first production manager, we found the most direct hard ass there is, to just, because you handle them in different ways. But knowing it, like you said, our first roof that we ever did, Lakota and I show up at it, and they're getting on the wrong house. And so we're like, what are you guys doing? So thank God we stopped there, because as being sales and marketing, the easy thing is, well, we sold it. They know what they're doing. They told us they've installed thousands of roofs. They're going to have it. But if we would have never showed up, we would have been doing 2 roofs. That would have been devastating to us in the beginning, because we didn't have many jobs, and like I said, when we started, I just left a job that I was making the most money I've ever made before. He left a job, he was making the most money, and we had no money coming in. So to have those losses, so to get your boots on the ground and go figure it out and learn those things. And, we learned the hard way. And some of them were, we did get taken advantage of, where they they charged us more for this because you're like, oh, that makes sense. It doesn't make sense because I don't even know what that even means. So it's just the brutal truth about it, you know. And but once we started learning, we realized who was actually in our corner during those times to teach us those things, and who was there just to take advantage of a couple young kids that were 21 and 27 years old at the time that had no idea about that side of things. So it's, you know, we didn't go as far as the things you did, Dustin, there, but learning and going to the job sites and learning what each thing meant was definitely beneficial because it helped us surround ourselves with the right people that weren't there to take advantage.
Yeah. Elephants don't bite, mosquitoes do. It's my favorite saying, right?
Yeah.
It's like sometimes when you teach what the little fasteners go for, how they're utilized, you know, how they're pinned, different aspects, cripples, you know, basically all the different stud work. Like I realize reps, and I think we, especially if you've been in the industry any amount of time, I take it for granted and took it for granted for a minute, just how simple construction is, but how complex it is to somebody who doesn't know it, right? So, you know, we all like to become an expert, but we don't want to take the time to train others to be an expert. We think they already know. It's like, it's so funny because I've been doing windows 100 years, right? I mean, I think I sold the first window with Moses back in the day. That's why I don't have any hair left because it'd be all gray. But the purpose is like even teaching like tempered glass, egress, things like that aren't sexy and fun, but it's commission killers. The things is how do you make it easy? How do you make it understandable? What are these things were done, right? And I think that from an installation side of it, it probably, you know, I always call it drive for show, putt for dough, right? We're putting for dough every time we hit the installation side because that's where we keep our money. And if the front end doesn't set the back end up, right, like hand the baton, you're never going to exceed expectations of the customer, you know, your company, or even the rep that's trying to get paid on that project, right? Because they don't understand the why. And I think when you get in that avenue, you start understanding, like, you know, treat everybody. I always have this rule: it's like treat everyone like they're in third grade. Not are you smarter than a fifth grader? Are you smarter than a third grader? Right? Because I think if you really put that thought into hand and you're trying to train your teams, or if you're a rep, listen to this thing, and you're trying to make money. Well, you're not going to make money if it slithers out of your fingers because you don't set the funnel up for success. Because kind of like that, it's like it's money, it's where you're putting it, and it's how you manage it is really your success of your business.
Tony,
Yeah, I think that with the knowing the why behind it, because you know, I sold in the house, I know what to do in the house. I was fairly decent in the house. I could build rapport. I could, you know, do those things. So when we're very good, I believe. But like I said, you got to ask the people. But is tell them the why you're doing this. Why are you using this line? You can give someone a sales process and say, memorize this in 2 weeks, and then you're going to be out in the field. But if they don't know why they're doing that, or why they're saying that, and why they're saying it at that time, then it doesn't matter, because they'll never be great at what they do. They may be good, but they'll never be great because they don't understand why they're doing those things. So, and for us, it's easy because we've done it so many times. Just say, why aren't you doing that? That's simple. Like that. Like, how are you not like, how don't you understand it? And it's because it's at one point, you know, I remember when I first started training, at one point I sat in that same chair learning a presentation, and I was also that person that didn't know what I was doing. And we forget that sometimes as we grow and as we understand every aspect of the business. We forget sometimes that these people, hey, this is their first day. So let's treat them like that. Let's treat them like that third grader that they need to be treated like, or else we're never going to get great sales reps or great marketers.
Tony, didn't you do a presentation around this, like how sales has changed now in terms of the way we, you know, we used to be so responsible to almost educate the consumer because they had nothing by the time we showed up. And I just remember you talking about something with the bridge, and then the bridge no longer. Am I wrong? Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think educating consumers in doses right before you get to the house can help shorten the sales cycle, because we constantly talk about how people's attention spans are shortening, right? And how, you know, we're having less and less time with the consumer. We wish we had, you know, as much time as we had in the olden days when we were there their source of entertainment for the evening. Instead, I think we need to get better at feeding them in doses and building a bridge so that when you get to the house, you're only focusing on what's really important at that point, right? Because there's just so much information to cover. If we can get it to them via text, get it through to them via video, via email, in the nurturing and cultivation process, I think that can really help us shorten the cycle a little bit. I don't think you jump from, selling in the home to selling online. Like I said, I think you keep shrinking that time that you spend in the home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, if I could just go to the home, I mean, like to me, it's like you mentioned, you then get in the home and you're just kind of dotting I's and crossing T's.
Yes.
And hopefully you're dotting their I's the same way that whatever you sent them in advance said it should be dotted and the T's should be crossed. Otherwise, that's going to be a challenge. Do you guys, everybody on here, based on what you said, everybody on here has been in the business pre-2020 in some form or fashion.
Yep.
Can we finally all agree that there's a definite line of, I don't know, for lack of a better line of demarcation in the sand, if you will, on the people that have got in this industry during COVID versus ones like us on this call pre?
You mean there's no more easy button?
You mean the fish aren't jumping in the boat anymore?
Yeah, but have we? I don't know. Somebody said 30 years, Tim, maybe whoever. I don't remember. I mean, COVID reminds me of the housing boom in the early 2000s, right, where everybody was a realtor. Throw a sign in the front yard, you can sell it, in no time. And now we're, where we're at. And I just had a rep the other day mention to me, he's like, man, I didn't realize it was this hard. I'm like, this. And then I realized, well, you weren't in the industry in 2019.
Right.
2019 was a tough year for the company I was with. Still did fine, but we, 15% short of where we wanted to be on leads. We were scrapping. But now it's like everybody thinks the world's got, the wheels are coming off the industry. And I'm like,
They got lazy.
Yeah.
In reality. It made people, shit was easy. What is it? What is the saying, Tony? The weak times or hard, what is it, Tony? What's that saying about weak men and hard times and all that jazz?
Yeah, you got it.
You got it. There's a bunch of hards and a bunch of weeks, and But
it's kind of like I always joke with our sales manager now, because he was a rep at one point, and he holds the highest of the most sales in the company, and he beat me for my year that when I was selling with another company, he closed more than me, and I always tell him, I said, yeah, but you did it during COVID. I didn't do it during COVID. Okay, you had the easy route, and it's funny you say that, because we were in business for about 3 to 6 months, and then COVID hit, and we had no idea what we were going to do because we couldn't knock doors. And then we became essential, and then it became everyone's home. So every door you knocked, everyone answered. So it was a beautiful thing. And one thing that I think we do well here is we're big implementers. If we get, we're careful with the advice we get, because if you change too much or take advice just because it worked for them doesn't mean it's going to work for you. But if it's going to work for us, or at least we're going to give it a shot, we're very good at implementing right away. And I think that's what has helped us during this transition of, quote unquote, the easy times, when COVID hit and everyone was home, everyone was spending their checks they were getting from the government, everyone was spending in home. So we were able to navigate and continue growing year after year because of the continuous learning from, the other experts that are out there that have gone through it, in 08, they've gone through it in 19, they've seen it all. So continuing to learn from them and putting your pride and ego to the side and realize that there's people out there that are a lot better than you. That's kind of helped us get through that easy time into, they're not flopping in the boat anymore, like they used to. You have to, and what it does too is it helped us step back, because during those times you're like, wow, he's a really good sales rep. And then you get them during the times that things aren't easy. You're like, why isn't he closing anymore? It's because it's kind of like DJ. Megan was talking about DJ. He said he used to sell 40 different products. And once he came down to 1 or 2 or 3, he realized that his selling process and his sales reps weren't that good, because they had tons of options, and the phones were always ringing because they literally did everything. So it helps you take a step back and figure out what you're doing wrong to then not do it wrong anymore, and make sure you're training these people. So when times are hard, you have good reps. You don't just have the ones that made a ton during that time.
Yeah. I believe everyone's got one shot in the house anyways, right? So this whole thing, like competition, you are your own competition, walk in the house.
Mhm.
But I feel like one of the things that happened during COVID, everyone became what I call a walking brochure, right? They could literally recite the brochure and then they would walk in and that was their sales pitch, right? So they forgot about the pain part. They forgot about even understanding what a warm up truly is designed for, right? And I'm not here to talk about, just all the sales process onto it, but it's so funny because nobody can really tell you. Not the right way, at least. So you get a lot of facades and get people to be real and all that fun stuff, right? But it's so much deeper when you start understanding psychology, human behavior, NLP, a lot of things in there where you can really master and start working on your craft. You can take your game to the next level, right? But people stopped working on that and they just started working on becoming a brochure. And if you're brochuring in the house, then at the end of the price, the only lever you have is to drop price as that. And I think that's where our industry got really weak. And they need to get back to basics on understanding how to build the pain, urgency, credibility, the different things that we work on. Because I feel like a lot of us got away from that because people got lazy, right? And it's a dirty 4-letter word we want to stay away from.
Yeah, I feel very fortunate that I've lived through a few of these cycles now, right? You see things like 2008 housing crash where, nobody, let me back up for a second. During COVID, I think I sold one canvassing manual through our website. I'm talking a 3-year period of time. We sell one a week typically, right? And that's just indicative of how much the fish were jumping in the boat. But back in 2008, after the housing crash, and they had implemented the $1,500 tax credit for energy efficient products, and we were using that to go door to door. And a lot of companies got back to the future with canvassing because it works. It's hard work, but we're not willing to do the hard work unless we have to, right? We're not willing to pull over and fill up the tank unless we're on E, right? That's just human nature. And COVID was just another example of that 2008 type cycle where everybody got out of it. They got out of all the difficult forms of lead generation, including just handling leads properly when they do call in, scheduling, all those types of things, speed to lead, speed to meet, all those key disciplines. And I think that's why, probably the biggest takeaway for me from the event was when Brian Gottlieb talked about, really honoring and documenting the business disciplines over, the SOPs, because SOPs change. Your business is evolving all the time. You're going to spend all that time documenting standard operating procedures that will quickly change if you switch CRMs or anything else. But the disciplines of we value leads, we meet leads quickly, we call leads quickly, we et cetera, et cetera. All those things never die.
Yep.
Yeah, he talked about that. We're a one-call close was one of them, right?
Yeah.
Having that can't be. It's hard to be a hybrid. Well, I know we've gone a little bit long. I do want to finish up, and just to get everyone around the horn. Who was, and you can't say yourself. Oh, you can. That'd be interesting though. Who was, if you don't mind, your favorite? What was your favorite presentation, and maybe a sentence on why? Tony, I'll start with you. Just kind of looking here. I don't know if everybody's on the same side of the screen or not, but
I'm going to go with Marcus Sheridan because he made me think. And that's why I love to go to those events, is to challenge some of my paradigms, challenge some of my thought processes. I don't agree with everything. I do agree with a lot. And I just love to be challenged. And I think iron sharpens iron. So that's Marcus was mine.
Megan?
I'm going to say Amy Zimmerman and Senya Spellman. And the reason for that is because I finally heard someone tell the truth from the stage about what TV actually costs. Right? I hear all these 10, 8%. I'm like, what the hell market are you in? I don't know anybody that starts TV at 8%. Like, it's very rare. And they gave really good, honest feedback about that. And, I feel like when we get somebody up there that, tells a fib on that, because I've seen that a lot in our industry where we're, exaggerating how well we're doing in certain areas, it hurts the whole industry. And I heard them get up there and tell the truth about that. And I thought that is good, because now people know what to expect. Now they say, hey, that's not a goal for this year, but it might be a goal for 2027 or 2028. But that was refreshing to me, because I just hear so many numbers being thrown around where I'm like, you're not doing that. And they, and so it's really, that was refreshing for me, Joe. I really liked that. And Marcus too, but Tony already kind of covered that. So.
Yeah, no, it's one of my bigger pet peeves, especially when you know some of them that are on there and you're like, yeah, that's not the bottom line in that business. I know, or what have you. But Dustin.
Well, I gotta brag on Ed. Every time Ed gets up there, man, he freaking belts it, 'cause he comes out of nowhere. When you talk to him, he's like the most quiet guy, and then he freaking comes alive on stage. But I would say, from what intrigued me the most was the guy from West Shore. Just because I feel like they've been working with like Penn State, constantly spending money on tech and innovation and things, right? And I call them like the RBA outside of RBA, because they're always working on trends, right? So how do you stay ahead of it? What are things that we can do? And just getting the mindset of where they feel like they're going, so I can try to step up and help us get ahead of that is always there. I always think that was one of the most interesting things, is seeing from the perspective of another large enterprise where they feel like the industry's going. And like you guys said, whether you agree or disagree, you got to stay open-minded or it can bury you, right? And that's
I love what Epi said about how they kind of grade leads or judge leads from a age perspective, and how they inquired, and then their response to that inquiry is tailor-made to that individual. I think that's really smart.
Yeah,
it's smart business.
Absolutely.
That's pretty intriguing. That brings up another topic for another day around grading leads, but we'll save that for some point. Derek.
I'm going to go with, I know it's probably against the rules, but I'm going to go with 2. Marcus, he wanted to be the Shohei, the kickoff, the home run hitter. I think he did a great job of, like, a lot of comments from Tony there, just saying, it opens your mind to see that, it's there, it's coming, play with it, see what it does for your company. So he had a lot of energy. He kept you in tune. He's moving around the audience. I really liked what he had to say. And then Tommy Mello, I'd never seen him, never heard of him. I've heard of him, but but during that event, I've heard everyone keep talking about him. Megan was bringing him up. A couple of other people that were there kept bringing him up. So I was just curious who this guy was. And then to hear him speak, what I think he brought out of it is, like his story about his mom when she used to set his appointments and send him out there. Hey, Tommy, he's an awesome man. He'll be out there to take care of you. You want him to pick up any coffee for you on the way out? As this AI stuff keeps coming out and we're not having that face-to-face, we're losing how we interact of just being a good human, and Tommy's story is incredible for how big he is and what he does for, his average ticket. It was incredible to see what he does and how he operates his business.
Yeah, he made us fellow ADHD speakers look really, really good on stage. I loved it. He was like, I got 55 slides in 30 minutes. Hold on. And it was all over the place, but I thought same thing. He hit some awesome points. That was great. Tim.
Well, the simple thing, what I was going to say was actually Tommy, just because kind of his example of leadership is kind of what I'm working on. So I think that's why it hit hard for me. But maybe just a point for all the conferences and why it's so important to attend them. It doesn't matter how many times you've heard a speaker. You're going to get something different. I've heard, Tony and Megan here probably 50 times, but I still got something out of their presentation. And so I think it's so important for us to continue to go to these things, even if you've been there, even if you've heard that speaker, go again. Your mindset's different at that point in time. You're going to hear something differently. So I think just go and continue to go.
Tim, that concept you're talking about there, we talk to reps about it all the time around keeping your original sales manual with you at all times. And they kind of look at you. It's like the words on the page don't change. But after you've been in 100 homes, the way you perceive those words definitely change.
Amen.
You know what I mean? So
we tell people,
100%.
we just said that again today too. You know, we come up with these great ideas and we implement them, and the next thing you know, the light switch gets turned off and we're not doing them anymore, and it was working. So the idea is, going to those events, going to LeadCon, going to Top 500. You're going to hear a lot of the same people, but you're going to get a couple golden nuggets out of every single time that you go to them.
The best analogy I can use is forgive the religion aspect, but many know me that I'm a very religious man. But using the Bible, if you've read the Bible once, are you done reading it? Why do you read it every single day? Or why do you read whatever scripture you have every day? It's because you get something different every single day. You could have read the exact same verse in that Bible 500 times and it just hit you the one time. So important to continue to do it every day.
Well, Jim Rohn used to say, when your favorite song comes on the radio, do you quickly change the channel?
That's good. I've never heard that before, but I love that.
Of course not. When you're scrolling, through the channels on the couch and you see your favorite movie, do you quickly change the channel? No, you recite the lines along with your favorite actor, along with your favorite singer. And that's because you have something you can get out of it. When something connected with you emotionally, it connected with you spiritually, it connected with you intellectually, however it connected and resonated with you, celebrate it.
Love it.
That I heard through a rumor that Joseph's a Swiftie. So he definitely is listening to all of those songs.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say K-pop Demon Hunters with my 5-year-old. If I hear movie and or song soundtrack one more time, I may turn that off in the car. I'm with you though, Dustin, on Ed. I think I even came up to you after it and I was like, man, you get to work with that guy all the time, don't you? And you're like, yeah. Not that I don't know, maybe I did know. I just didn't realize because I have seen him speak before. I thought the industry needed to hear exactly what he had to say at the time. I was just looking at the slides earlier and he talked about a golden age of remodeling is forthcoming. And I just thought it was realistic, not, but optimistic, right? We've got challenges, but we have the awareness of those challenges and there's tons of opportunity to get back. I also thought that the panel idea, Derek, with you guys was awesome. And I hope they do more of that. Sometimes it gets tough. Derek, if you don't mind me saying, how you mentioned on stage, how big are you guys this year?
We're going to finish right around 15 million.
Yeah. And for years, I think one of the common complaints was you just had guys and gals on stage talking about $100+ million, companies and acquisitions. And I was glad to see the tone of the event after the Renovo thing. Maybe it was always going down that path, but I'm sure the tone of the event hopefully changed a little bit from where people were originally maybe going to take it to where they did. So that was good to be present. And then I thought, which was great, I thought Chris Cunningham, the way he just hit the nail on the head, it's 3 things: generate a lead, sell a lead, put it in the wall. Like, how do we get back to that? Because that's what it is, right? We're getting caught up in tech. We're adding a week to our onboard training because we got 17 apps we got to, bring them in on. We've got this, that, and the other. And I just thought his message was, obviously he talked about the halo effect, but in the beginning, he went down that path of there's just 3 things: just generate a lead, sell it, put it in the wall, and do it as many times as you can in a single day, every day. So, I can't speak to the Renovo. I can't speak, but usually when a company doesn't survive, some of it comes down just to relentless execution, just stops.
No
regardless
comment.
of ideas, right? Yeah, no, and I'm saying anybody though, and you just see it. We had a good friend in the industry, was just trying to figure out some challenges with the sales team. And the first question was, when's the last time you've been in the home with your reps? I haven't. Well, let's start there before we start flipping over tables on something else. So, but awesome. Any parting words? I know we went a little bit long. I can't thank everybody for joining. Hopefully there was some value for everybody. I'm sure that will watch it or did watch it. But anything before we go? Any parting words?
I think one of the things that I'll share with you that I probably have said 100 times since the event, and it reminded me because I didn't end up going last year, but I went again this year, is it is the biggest industry, but yet the smallest one at the same time. Because what happens is you get to know everybody at those events, and everybody becomes like family where you see each other and you might not see each other all the time. It just creates a connection between everyone. And then again, like you said, iron sharpens iron. And it's the relationships, and it's why you never burn a bridge in this industry, because you never know when you're going to need it. So it's always a good thing.
Spot on. Spot on. Well, again, folks, I appreciate it. Thanks for joining us. And if you watch it on the rewind, I'm sure everybody on this call is in the group. So if you ever want to reach out to Tim, Derek, Dustin, Megan, or Tony, I'm almost positive in saying that if you connect to them Facebook, they'll respond to you and help you do it again. So that's the goal of the group. So I appreciate it. You guys and gals have a great one, and we'll see everybody again soon.
Thanks for having us.
Happy
Thank you.
Thanksgiving, all.